American girls and American guys, we'll always stand up and salute. We'll always recognize when we see old glory flying. There's a lot of men dead, so we can sleep in peace at night when we lay down our heads.
And we are back here on Cam and Company.
My daddy served in the army.
Joining us now is Representative Paul Gosar. How are you, sir? Welcome back to Cam and Company.
Thank you so very much, Cameron.
It's Cameron Gray, John Pop, Andrew Langer. Congressman, it's an honor to have you on the show, sir. You represent, of course, the district in Arizona that was affected by the Yarnell fire, the unbelievable, almost unspeakable tragedy of the 19 hotshots who were lost, the entire team. First of all, sir, you know, you're a human. Of course, you're a member of Congress, but you're a human being. You're a man. How did it affect you when you heard about this news and you went to the memorial? Tell me what it was like. Tell me what it was like to be there, to speak there, and how is the community handling this?
Well, you know, it's when you hear the news, which we heard, we were just numb. You just don't, it's just hard to register. It's just unfathomable that 19 young men lost their lives, you know, together, you know, fighting a fire and trying to save homes. And frankly, most of them didn't even know the people whose homes they were trying to save.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's just a true aspect of heroism. And Prescott is, they all came from the Prescott area. You know, Prescott's known as everybody's hometown, and they really are that. So what we did is we were supposed to have a congressional hearing Monday night, and we just postponed that and utilized the time for a memorial. We had a gymnasium that held 900 people. We actually had 1,200 people in the gym,
Wow.
and there were 200 to 300 people in the grass outside, and hundreds of people actually were turned away. That just shows you how Prescott turns off. But it was gut-wrenching, and I think the culmination was we invited. I was the MC of the memorial, and I asked the hotshot crews and the firefighters to come on down that were in the audience. Yeah. And for 15 minutes, they got a standing ovation, and they just broke down.
Hey, Congressman, can you explain to our listeners what a hotshot crew is? You know,
that was the first time I'd heard that phrase, by the way. Yes, good question. Thank you.
These are a crew that go into the fire that are especially trained for wildland fires. They're very athletic. They got to be able to do lots of heavy lifting, carrying a chainsaw, a pick, their water, some food, and their protective clothing. And I mean, it's like half billy goat, half superhuman. Just unbelievable. And what they do is they try to try to save buildings, save people, and try to get a working deterrent around the fire. So they're really special human beings.
And so what is the status of this fire now?
Well, it's still at about 8,500 acres. They got some set down of it last night. There's some moisture in the air finally, but we have monsoon seasons, and for anybody that knows the Arizona monsoons, it could be dark, and you may get rain in North Prescott, but it may be totally dry where Yarnell is, and this is what created this fire. As the water releases exponentially out of the clouds, there's also a rush in all directions of heavy winds that sometimes can go 50 to 70 miles an hour. And this is what created this fire, and it just took off. It's just horrific. But, I mean, it exploded. This was a lightning strike late last week. They had it managed, and then all of a sudden what happened is you had one of these outbursts of wind with the lack of rain, and off it took, and very dry conditions, and the shrub just explodes when it just is touched by heat.
Speaking with Representative Paul Gosar, Republican from Arizona. Representative, it's always so hard in a situation like this with tragedy, but to see any positive coming out. But one thing I have noticed when you mentioned what happened with supposed to be a town hall meeting, it turned into a memorial and just an event like this. The one thing I've seen, and just in watching it from a distance, the coverage of this is how this community has pulled together. You said how this is everyone's hometown. It's such an incredible community, how they've all pulled together for each other to get through this tragedy.
It is. In fact, that night at the memorial service, we raised almost $10,000 right there on the spot for the 100 Club, which is a firefighting organization that has already written checks for every of these 19 families so that they can get by, with funeral arrangements and stuff so that they can go through the grieving process. And it's just a great town. It's a town that I really like because they like to solve things. They're there for each other, and this just gives you an example of it. It's a tragedy, absolute tragedy. To lose such brilliant people, such fabulous people, the height of their life. But if there's one place that will get her done, and that is actually Prescott.
Congressman, we're talking to Congressman Paul Gosar of Arizona. Congressman, you mentioned the 100 Club. Is that if our listeners and our viewers want to help out with the families and what's anything they can do to help out there, is that the organization you would most recommend people donate to?
I would. From what we've heard, this has been a phenomenal club. They've never had to write, 19 checks in a year, and they just wrote 19 checks. I know that Glenn Beck wrote a $50,000 check yesterday, wow. And this goes to these firefighters. Most of them do not have benefits. They're seasonal help, particularly in our wildfire season. So. Anything people can do, boy, we'd sure like to have them go to the 100 Club, and it's 100club.org, and they'll make sure that their donations go back to these firefighting families.
And I should also mention on Twitter, it's at AZ100Club, AZ100 Club, and we'll put that on the Cam and Company Twitter feed. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, Congressman, let me just ask you, I'm trying to get a sense. This is a beautiful country. South, I guess Yarnell Hill is southwest of Prescott.
Yes.
Is this part of the Prescott National Forest, or is this is this privately owned land? How is this land being managed?
Well, a lot of this was under state jurisdiction.
Okay.
So we in Arizona, we have lots of public land. We also have a lot of state land. It's checkerboarded throughout the district. And so this was originally under the control of the state forester and then turned over to an incident command the day before yesterday, in which they now have almost 600 men and women fighting this fire. So,
but was this land land being managed for timber purposes or for recreational purposes or?
No, and that's some of the problems that we have is that this was heavily overgrown with shrub. It's got mesquite, chaparral. It was overgrown. The last fire was between 60 and 80 years ago. It's real heavily terrained. It's got big boulders mixed in here, and there's homes dotted throughout. So it makes it just, like I said, those who fight the fire got to be part billy goat and superhuman.
Sure.
This is a policy that we still have to start managing right. In Arizona, in the last 3 years, in my first term, we had the largest Arizona forest fire in Arizona history. It cost the American taxpayers $400 million to put out. It cost the taxpayers $2.5 billion of assets that were theirs. And when you talk to the environmental community, 20% of the world's known spotted owl population burned up. And here we have a fire that we lose 19 of our most enduring, assets. Our kids, our family, and you can't put a price tag on that. So we've got to come to a better grips about how do we manage these forest lands, making sure that we have tort liability to make sure that we can actually have access to them to clear them out, and then we also have to empower homeowners to build defensible restraints around their property so that we don't endanger our young men and women who are fighting these fires.
Congressman, we were talking earlier, Andrew especially, we were talking about what's going on in Egypt right now, and one of the concepts that he is big on is property rights. He was talking about the rights of, Egyptians to own their own property, and it's turned into a discussion about the quote-unquote war on the West, and of course you represent a district in Arizona. You must be dealing and seeing a lot of this. When you hear war on the West, what does that mean to you, and what are you doing in Congress to fight it?
Well, I mean, we were promised in exchange for having large tracts of publicly held land, revenues for the multiple use of that. And a lot of those resources go to our educational system from K through 12. It's funny that you bring that up because west of the Mississippi, those states west of the Mississippi with large deposits of federal land get about one-half the dollars that east of the Mississippi gets for their education per student. And, each year we go in Congress and beg for the replacement of that through secure rural schools and payment in lieu of taxes. And it's getting, to be a point where the states are probably joined together and sue the federal government. But, we can't access our timber, we can't access our lands, we can't go in multiple use. We have minerals from coal to timber to copper.
To oil.
And oil, absolutely. Natural gas. And you see this administration in particular, holding us back from actually utilizing those resources. There's been a war on that, and then also maybe more importantly, is water. In Arizona in the West, we say that whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting over. Water is so important, and the federal government has been making attempts to take over the water jurisdictions by trying to allocate them as waters of the U.S. And that becomes problematic.
And the worst part, when those things come together, like they did down near Bisbee, where they the water main coming off the mountains down to the town of I think it was Bisbee, maybe it was Tombstone, where the water main broke, and the federal government would not let the town go up there and fix it because it was coming across federal lands.
Well, it was a wilderness area, and very similar to what happened in Flagstaff. I have helped to mitigate. We had a forest fire called the Schultz Pass Fire up on the peaks here in Arizona, and it was a wilderness primitive area, and they wouldn't let mechanized machinery in there, and we were able to mitigate that and repair a pipeline. But we're still dealing with the consequences of this. We have homeowners that are down below them that when we get these monsoonal rains, there is no vegetation now to hold back, and it floods. And what we've got to do is we've got to come about and understand that, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, that it's, for every dollar spent in mitigation in trying to remove chaparral, thin the forest, we save $19 in firefighting costs. And that's a big number. And when you start to look at rebuilding an industry, allowing people to compete for thinning of the forest and allowing them to sell products, all of a sudden in Arizona, you start putting 1,000 people to work. And we've actually done that. I've been one of the champions for this 4-Fry initiative. And what it basically is it's a compromise between the logging industry, the environmental groups, and the government to start doing these large swaths of forest thinning. Ponderosa trees, which grow here in Arizona, they're prevalent here, should be about 60 trees per acre. And most of our rim country has between 200 and 600 trees per acre. You got to thin those out. The problem that we've got is the bureaucracy of the federal government. So I have been a big champion of trying to have common sense, moving these forward, and making sure that we have common sense applications from the environmental communities because we're losing. We're losing badly, and America's hurting because of it.
We're talking to Congressman Paul Gosar of Arizona. Congressman, one last question before we let you go. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about the biggest story of the day. What is going on in Cairo and Egypt right now when you're talking about the President Morsi being pushed out by a military coup? We have sent a lot of money. We've sent a lot of equipment over to that country. You as a member of Congress, how do you feel about what's going on in Egypt today? And what do you think is going to happen going forward?
Well, first of all, I've been one that has been very deliberative and outspoken in regards that we shouldn't be giving money away and assets to people who hate us.
Yeah.
I have a bill on the floor called the FALT Act that basically says that if you're a nation of bad behavior, that you can't get foreign aid. And I think what we ought to be doing is instead of complying with people that are terrorists that don't see human rights like we do, and Morsi was not one of those people, religious freedoms, educational freedoms, we shouldn't be giving money to them under those aspects. And I know there's a lot of people that are agreeing with me that we ought to be rewarding good behavior. I had said all from the very get-go, the coup with the Muslim Brotherhood was at best a poor, ill-fated experiment. Now having a coup, this is going to be an interesting aspect because it shows how volatile the Middle East is, that we don't have good answers, and we've been playing from behind with this administration with their foreign policy, particularly in the Middle East.
All right, Congressman, as we let you go, one more time, 100club.org or on Twitter at AZ100Club if you want to donate, help out the families of the victims of the Yarnell fire. And I'm sure you were glad to be out there and to speak. And I'm sure it was heart-wrenching, but it was also, I'm sure you were very happy to be there and to see your community and your district come together. So, of course, we are so horribly sorry for the loss of life. And we hope, for the rapid grieving and coming together of the constituents and the families, and we hope that their sorrow ends quickly, sir.
Well, I hope that everybody keeps them in your thoughts and prayers. And if you can donate, when we all gather in and help financially, it all pays off. And I think that America's greatest at these times of trouble. Being that Prescott is everybody's hometown, I think it's kind of a mantra that we to protect everybody's hometown's fallen heroes.